Titulo. The vampire prince proposed to her every year for 50 years. On year 51, she finally said yes. The first time Prince Elias Nighthaven laid eyes on Rosemary Sullivan, she was 18 years old and arguing with a bookstore clerk about the price of a first edition of Pride and Prejudice. It was 1953, and the small town of Millbrook was still recovering from the war, but Rosemary stood in that dusty shop like a beacon of light, her auburn hair catching the afternoon sun streaming through the window, her green eyes flashing with indignation as she defended her right to afford literature. Elias had been alive for 400 years. He had seen empires rise and fall, had witnessed the birth of nations and the death of kings. He had loved before, or thought he had, but nothing had prepared him for the moment when Rosemary turned and their eyes met across that cramped bookstore. It was, quite simply, the end of his world as he knew it. "Excuse me," he said, stepping forward with the fluid grace that marked him as something other than human, though few mortals ever noticed. "Perhaps I could be of assistance?" Rosemary looked him up and down, taking in his expensive suit, his perfect posture, and the way he seemed to command attention simply by existing. Her expression shifted from curiosity to suspicion in the span of a heartbeat. "I don't need assistance," she said coolly. "I need fair pricing." "Of course." Elias smiled, and even he was aware of the devastating effect that smile usually had on mortals. "But perhaps if I were to purchase the book for you—" "Absolutely not." Rosemary's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "I don't accept charity from strangers, especially not from men who think money solves everything." The bookstore clerk, a nervous man in his 50s, looked between them with growing alarm. "Miss Sullivan, perhaps we could work out a payment plan." "That won't be necessary," Elias said, withdrawing his wallet. "I'll take the book and whatever else Miss Sullivan was interested in purchasing." I said no. Rosemary stepped between Elias and the counter, her chin raised defiantly. "Keep your money, Mr. Nighthaven, Elias Nighthaven." He offered a slight bow, a gesture that belonged to an earlier century, but somehow didn't seem out of place coming from him. "And you are Miss Rosemary Sullivan, if I heard correctly. How do you know my name?" The clerk mentioned it. Elias's smile widened, "Though I would have asked regardless. It's not often one encounters someone so passionate about literature." "Passionate about fairness," Rosemary corrected. "Literature just happens to be what's at stake today." "Indeed. Well, Miss Sullivan, since you won't allow me to purchase the book for you, perhaps you'd permit me to make you an offer of a different sort." Rosemary's eyes narrowed. "What kind of offer?" Elias took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to say would sound insane to anyone listening. But 4 centuries of existence had taught him that sometimes the most important moments required the greatest leaps of faith. "Marry me." The silence that followed was so complete that Elias could hear the dust motes settling on the bookshelves. The clerk's mouth fell open, and Rosemary stared at Elias as if he had just declared his intention to sprout wings and fly to the moon. "I beg your pardon?" she said finally. "Marry me," Elias repeated, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was proposing. "I know it sounds sudden, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Rosemary laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with disbelief. "You're insane." "Quite possibly, but I'm also serious. You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you're intelligent, passionate, and principled. I know you'd rather argue with a clerk than accept help from a stranger. I know you love books enough to fight for them." Elias stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. "And I know that I fell in love with you the moment I saw you." "That's not love," Rosemary said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "That's infatuation, attraction, a passing fancy." "Perhaps, but I'm willing to prove otherwise." "How?" "By asking you again next year, and the year after that, and every year until you say yes." Rosemary stared at him for a long moment, then burst out laughing again. "You're completely mad." "Mad about you, yes. I'm saying no. I expected as much, but I'll be back next year. Don't bother. The answer will still be no." "We'll see." Elias turned to the clerk, who was still gaping at them. "I'll take the Pride and Prejudice and please add it to Miss Sullivan's account. Consider it a gift from an admirer." "I told you," Rosemary began. "You told me you wouldn't accept charity." "This isn't charity. This is a courtship gift. Surely you can't object to that." "I can and I do." "Too late." Elias handed the clerk a $20 bill, far more than the book was worth. "Keep the change." "And, Miss Sullivan?" "What?" "I'll see you next year." He left the bookstore with the sound of Rosemary's protests ringing in his ears, but also with something he hadn't felt in centuries: hope. That night, Elias stood on the balcony of his estate overlooking Millbrook, staring down at the lights of the small town and thinking about green eyes and auburn hair, and the way Rosemary Sullivan had looked when she laughed. His estate was a sprawling Victorian mansion that had been in his family for over a century, though of course he was the only family member who remembered its construction. To the townspeople, he was simply the reclusive heir to old money, a man who kept to himself and conducted his business affairs through intermediaries. They had no idea that he was older than their great-grandfathers, that he had walked the earth when their town was nothing but wilderness, that he sustained himself on blood and had strength enough to tear a man in half with his bare hands. They certainly had no idea that their local eccentric had just fallen hopelessly in love with a mortal woman who thought he was completely insane. "You're brooding," came a voice from behind him. Elias turned to see his oldest friend and advisor, Marcus Blackwood, emerging from the shadows. Marcus was also a vampire, though considerably younger than Elias at a mere 200 years. He served as Elias's steward and confidant, managing the practical aspects of immortal existence while Elias focused on the broader responsibilities of his princely title. "I'm contemplating," Elias corrected, "about the mortal woman, I assume. Her name is Rosemary." "I see. And you've decided to pursue her?" "I've decided to marry her." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "She said yes?" "She said no." "Ah, and yet you speak of marriage as if it's a foregone conclusion." "Because it is." Elias turned back to the view of the town. "I'm going to ask her every year until she says yes." "Elias." Marcus's voice carried a note of concern. "You do realize she's mortal, don't you? She'll age. She'll die. Even if she eventually says yes, you'll have perhaps 50 years with her at most. Then I'll treasure every moment of those 50 years. And when she's gone, what then?" Elias was quiet for a long moment. "Then I'll have loved completely, which is more than most beings can say in 1,000 lifetimes. You could transform her, make her like us, not without her consent. And somehow, I don't think Miss Rosemary Sullivan is the type of woman who would appreciate being turned into a vampire without her explicit agreement. So you'll court a mortal woman for decades, knowing that even success will ultimately lead to loss. Yes, you're either the most romantic fool I've ever known, or the most masochistic, perhaps both." Elias smiled, and there was something in that smile that spoke of centuries of loneliness finally finding purpose. "But Marcus, you should have seen her, the way she stood up to that clerk, the way she refused my help, the fire in her eyes when she told me no. She's magnificent. She sounds formidable. She is. And she's going to be my wife. Eventually." "Eventually." Marcus sighed, recognizing the futility of arguing with Elias when he had made up his mind about something. "Very well. How do you plan to proceed?" "Carefully. Patiently. I have time, after all. More time than she does, which is why I can't waste any of it." The next morning, Elias began what would become a 50-year campaign of courtship, unlike anything the world had ever seen. He started by learning everything he could about Rosemary Sullivan, her family, her dreams, her fears, her favorite books and foods and flowers. He discovered that she lived with her widowed mother and younger brother in a small house on Elm Street, that she worked as a secretary at the local law firm, and that she spent her evenings reading by the window that overlooked the town square. He learned that she had wanted to go to college but couldn't afford it, that she dreamed of opening her own bookstore someday, and that she had turned down 3 marriage proposals from local men because she believed there had to be more to life than settling for the first acceptable option. Most importantly, he learned that she was everything he had thought she was in that bookstore: intelligent, passionate, independent, and utterly unwilling to compromise her principles for the sake of convenience. A year passed. Elias spent it watching from a distance, occasionally crossing paths with Rosemary in town, but never pushing, never pressuring. He helped her mother's garden flourish with subtle applications of vampire abilities, ensured that her brother got the scholarship he needed for trade school, and made sure that the law firm where she worked received enough business to justify giving her a raise. He did all of this without her knowledge, of course. Rosemary Sullivan was far too proud to accept help, even from someone she was beginning to think of as a friend. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Elias appeared at her door with a bouquet of white roses and a nervous smile. "Miss Sullivan," he said when she answered the door, "I believe I made you a promise last year." Rosemary looked at the roses, then at his face, and sighed. "You're really going to do this, aren't you?" "I am." "Every year?" "Every year. Even though I'm going to say no?" "Even though you're going to say no. Today." Rosemary stepped out onto her front porch, closing the door behind her. She was wearing a blue dress that brought out her eyes, and Elias had to remind himself to breathe. "Mr. Nighthaven." "Elias, please." "Elias, this is very sweet, but also completely ridiculous. You can't possibly be serious about proposing to me every year for the rest of our lives." "Why not?" "Because it's insane. Because you barely know me. Because I've given you no reason to think I'll ever change my mind." "Haven't you?" Rosemary frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're talking to me. Last year you would have slammed the door in my face. That's just politeness. Is it? Or is it possible that you've come to think of me as less of a stranger and more of a persistent acquaintance?" "Persistent is certainly the word for it." Elias held out the roses. "Rosemary Sullivan, will you marry me?" "No. I expected as much. But will you accept the flowers?" Rosemary hesitated, then took the bouquet. "They're beautiful. Not as beautiful as you. Flattery will get you nowhere." "Perhaps not. But honesty might." "You think I'm beautiful?" "I think you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. But more than that, I think you're the most remarkable person I've ever met. You don't know me well enough to make that judgment. Then give me the chance to know you better. By proposing to me every year? By being your friend? By being someone you can count on? By proving that my feelings for you are real and lasting?" Rosemary studied his face, searching for signs of deception or ulterior motive. "What do you want from me, Elias?" "Everything. Your heart, your hand, your future. But I'm willing to settle for your friendship, if that's all you're prepared to give. And if I'm never prepared to give more, then I'll treasure your friendship and continue to hope." "For how long?" "Forever, if necessary." Rosemary shook her head, but she was smiling. "You're impossible. I'm in love. Those aren't mutually exclusive." "No, they're not." She looked down at the roses in her hands, then back at his face. "I'm saying no, Elias, to the proposal. But thank you for the flowers." "You're welcome. I'll see you next year." "You really will, won't you?" "I really will." As Elias walked away, he heard Rosemary call after him. "Elias?" He turned. "Yes?" "Why me? Out of all the women in the world, why me?" Elias considered the question seriously. "Because when I look at you, I see home. I see the end of a very long journey. I see the beginning of everything that matters. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person. I know. I'm sorry for that. But I can't help how I feel." "And you really think that feeling will last? Year after year, rejection after rejection?" "I know it will." "How can you be so certain?" "Because I've been alive long enough to know the difference between infatuation and love. This is love, Rosemary. The kind that lasts forever." Rosemary watched him walk away, clutching the roses to her chest and wondering why she felt more confused than annoyed by his persistence. That night, she put the roses in a vase by her bedroom window and found herself thinking about the way Elias had looked at her. Not with the hungry appreciation she was used to from men, but with something deeper, something that felt like reverence. It was ridiculous, of course. They barely knew each other. He was clearly wealthy and sophisticated, while she was just a small-town secretary with big dreams and limited means. They had nothing in common except a chance meeting in a bookstore and his inexplicable fixation on marrying her. But as she drifted off to sleep, Rosemary found herself wondering what it would be like to be loved with that kind of certainty, that kind of devotion. And despite herself, she found the idea rather appealing. The accident happened on a rainy Tuesday in October. Rosemary's younger brother Tommy was walking home from his job at the auto repair shop when a drunk driver ran a red light and sent him flying 20 feet through the air. By the time the ambulance arrived, Tommy was unconscious and bleeding from a head wound that the paramedics said looked fatal. Rosemary got the call at work and rushed to the hospital, her heart pounding with terror. Tommy was only 22, just starting his life, and the thought of losing him was unbearable. She burst through the emergency room doors to find Elias already there, pacing the waiting room with the controlled agitation of a caged predator. "What are you doing here?" she asked, too frightened to be polite. I heard about the accident. I came as soon as I could. How did you? Word travels fast in a small town. Elias looked at her with eyes full of compassion. How is he? I don't know. They won't tell me anything. He's in surgery. But the doctors, they don't sound hopeful. He'll be fine. You don't know that. Yes, I do. There was something in Elias's voice, a certainty that went beyond mere optimism, that made Rosemary look at him more closely. What aren't you telling me? Nothing. I have a good feeling about this. What Elias didn't tell her was that he had arrived at the hospital before the ambulance, had used his vampire abilities to stabilize Tommy's injuries while the paramedics worked, and had subtly influenced the surgical team to ensure they made exactly the right decisions at exactly the right moments. Tommy Sullivan would live and he would make a full recovery, because Elias Nighthaven had decided that Rosemary's brother was too important to lose. The surgery took 6 hours. Rosemary spent those hours pacing the waiting room, drinking terrible coffee, and trying not to think about what she would do if Tommy died. Elias stayed with her the entire time, not saying much but simply being present, a steady and reassuring force in the chaos of her fear. When the surgeon finally emerged with news that Tommy would make a full recovery, Rosemary collapsed into a chair and burst into tears of relief. Elias knelt beside her, offering his handkerchief and a shoulder to cry on. Thank you, she whispered against his chest. For what? For being here. For staying with me. I don't think I could have gotten through this alone. You're stronger than you think, Rosemary. But you never have to face anything alone as long as I'm around. She pulled back to look at him, seeing something in his face that she had never noticed before. You really mean that, don't you? I mean everything I say to you. Even the marriage proposals? Especially the marriage proposals. Despite everything, Rosemary found herself smiling. You know, most men would have given up by now. I'm not most men. No, you're not. She studied his face, taking in the sharp cheekbones, the dark hair, the eyes that seemed older than his apparent age. What are you exactly? I'm someone who loves you. That's not what I meant. I know, but it's the only answer that matters. Later that evening, after Tommy had been moved to a regular room and was sleeping peacefully, Elias walked Rosemary to her car. Rosemary, he said as she fumbled with her keys. I know this isn't the best time, but I made a promise. A promise? To ask you a question every year on this date? Rosemary looked at him in disbelief. You're going to propose to me now? Today? After everything that's happened? I'm going to ask you to marry me, yes. Because today proved something important. What? That I want to be the person you turn to when your world falls apart. I want to be the one who holds you when you cry, who stays with you through the long nights, who helps you carry whatever burdens life throws at you. Elias took her hands in his. I want to be your partner in everything, Rosemary. The good times and the bad times and all the ordinary moments in between. Elias, will you marry me? Rosemary looked into his eyes and felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time, the question didn't sound completely insane. It sounded like an offer of safety, of partnership, of unconditional support. But it also sounded too good to be true. No, she said softly. But thank you. For today. For being here. For caring about Tommy. You don't need to thank me for caring about the people you love. Don't I? No. Because loving you means loving the people who matter to you. You keep saying you love me, but you don't really know me. I know you well enough to know that I want to spend the rest of my life learning everything else. Rosemary squeezed his hands gently, then let go. I have to go. My mother will be worried. Of course. Drive safely. Elias? Yes? Will you check on Tommy tomorrow? I have to work, but I hate the thought of him being alone. I'll check on him every day until he's released. You don't have to. I want to. Rosemary nodded, then impulsively rose on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek. Thank you, she whispered, then got in her car and drove away before she could do something even more impulsive. Elias stood in the hospital parking lot for a long time after she left. His hand pressed to the spot where her lips had touched his skin, and felt something that might have been hope beginning to bloom in his chest. Here 10. The bookstore was everything Rosemary had ever dreamed of and nothing she could afford. The previous owner, Mrs. Henderson, was retiring and had offered to sell the shop to Rosemary for a price that might as well have been $1 million for all the chance she had of raising it. I'm sorry, dear. Mrs. Henderson said as they stood among the towering shelves of books that Rosemary had been coveting for years. "I know how much this place means to you, but I have to think about my retirement. I need to get fair market value." "I understand," Rosemary said, though her heart was breaking. I was hoping we could work out some kind of payment plan. I wish I could, but my lawyer says it's too risky. What if something happened to you? What if you couldn't make the payments?" "Nothing will happen to me. You can't guarantee that, dear. And I can't take that chance." Rosemary nodded, blinking back tears. She had been saving for this opportunity for 7 years, working extra hours and denying herself every luxury. But it still wasn't enough. It would never be enough. "I'll keep saving," she said. "Maybe in a few more years?" "I can't wait a few more years, Rosemary. I need to sell now." "I know. I'm sorry." Rosemary left the bookstore feeling like she had lost something precious, even though it had never really been hers to begin with. She walked home slowly, trying to figure out how to tell her mother that her dream was going to remain just that, a dream. She was so lost in her thoughts that she almost didn't notice the black sedan parked outside her house. Almost. Elias was leaning against the car, looking impossibly elegant in a charcoal gray suit, and holding what appeared to be legal documents. "Hello, Rosemary," he said as she approached. "Elias, what are you doing here? I heard about the bookstore." "Word travels fast in a small town," she said, echoing his words from years past. "Indeed it does. I also heard that Mrs. Henderson is having trouble finding a qualified buyer." "She's not having trouble. She just can't afford to take risks on people like me." "People like you? People without enough money?" Elias held out the documents. "What if I told you that money was no longer an issue?" Rosemary stared at the papers suspiciously. "What are those?" "A business loan. Enough to buy the bookstore and renovate it to your specifications with very favorable terms and a payment schedule you can actually manage." "From who?" "A private investor who believes in supporting local businesses." "You?" "Me? Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because I don't accept charity, Elias. I thought I'd made that clear. This isn't charity. It's a business investment. I expect to be paid back, with interest." "At what rate?" "The current market rate." "Which is?" "Irrelevant. The point is, this is a legitimate business transaction." Rosemary crossed her arms. "What's the catch?" "No catch. There's always a catch. Not this time. So you're just going to loan me thousands of dollars out of the goodness of your heart?" "I'm going to loan you thousands of dollars because I believe in you. Because I think you'll make that bookstore into something wonderful. Because I want to see you achieve your dreams. And it has nothing to do with your annual marriage proposals?" "It has everything to do with my annual marriage proposals, but not in the way you think." "Explain." Elias stepped closer, his expression serious. "I'm not trying to buy your affection, Rosemary. I'm trying to prove that I see you, really see you, and that I want to support your dreams whether you marry me or not." "That doesn't make sense from a business perspective." "It makes perfect sense from a love perspective." Rosemary stared at him for a long moment, then at the documents in his hands. "What if I take the loan and still say no when you propose? Then you take the loan and say no. The two things are completely separate." "Are they?" "They are. And you won't use this against me? Won't try to make me feel guilty or obligated?" "Never." "Promise?" "I promise." Rosemary looked at the papers again, then at the hope in Elias's eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I love you. Because I want you to be happy. Because your dreams matter to me, even if achieving them doesn't bring you any closer to getting what you want." Especially then. Against her better judgment, Rosemary found herself reaching for the documents. "I'll read through these. Have my lawyer look at them. If everything is legitimate," "It is." "Then, maybe I'll consider it. That's all I ask." 3 weeks later, Rosemary signed the papers and became the proud owner of Sullivan's Books. The renovations took 2 months, during which Elias appeared regularly to check on the progress, offer suggestions, and provide encouragement when Rosemary was overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was undertaking. He never once mentioned marriage during those 2 months. He simply showed up, helped however he could, and left when his presence was no longer needed. On the day of the grand opening, he sent flowers. Not roses this time, but a beautiful arrangement of books made from white and yellow chrysanthemums. The card read, "Congratulations on making your dreams come true. E." The bookstore was a success from the very first day. Rosemary had an instinct for what people wanted to read. and she created a warm, welcoming atmosphere that made customers want to linger. She added a small cafe in the back, hosted reading groups and author events, and slowly but surely built the kind of community gathering place she had always envisioned. On the first anniversary of the store's opening, Elias appeared with his annual bouquet of white roses and his annual question. "Rosemary Sullivan," he said as she locked up the shop for the evening, "will you marry me?" "No," she said, but she was smiling. "But thank you. For the loan. For believing in me. For helping me build this. You built this. I just provided some financial support. You provided more than that. You provided faith. You've always been worthy of faith. Have I? Always." Rosemary looked at her bookstore, at the warm light spilling from the windows, at the sign that bore her name. "I never thanked you properly. You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do." She turned to face him fully. "This place, this dream, it's changed my life. It's given me purpose and independence and a sense of accomplishment I never had before. And I couldn't have done it without you. You could have found another way. Maybe. But you made it possible now, when I needed it most. That matters. I'm glad I could help." "Why, Elias, really, why? What do you get out of helping me achieve my dreams if it doesn't bring you any closer to achieving yours?" Elias was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Do you know what I see when I look at you, Rosemary?" "What?" "I see someone who makes the world brighter just by being in it. I see someone who deserves every happiness, every success, every dream fulfilled. And if I can play a small part in making that happen, then I'm honored to do so. Even if I never love you back? Even then. That's not how most people love. No, it's not. But it's how I love you." Rosemary felt something warm and complicated unfurling in her chest. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything with it, just let me love you. Let me be part of your life in whatever way you're comfortable with. And you'll keep proposing every year? I'll keep proposing every year. Even though I keep saying no? Even though you keep saying no? You're either the most patient man alive or completely insane. Probably both." Rosemary laughed, and the sound was warmer than it had been in previous years. "I'm saying no, Elias. But I'm glad you asked. So am I. I'll see you next year? You'll see me next year." As Elias walked away, Rosemary found herself watching him go with something that might have been regret. He was a good man, strange and mysterious, and far too wealthy for his own good, but undeniably good. And he loved her with a constancy that was both flattering and slightly terrifying. For the first time in 10 years, she found herself wondering what it would be like to say yes. Year 20, Rosemary's father died on a Thursday in March, quietly and without warning, of a heart attack that took him in his sleep. She found him when she went to check on him after he failed to show up for their weekly lunch, and the sight of his peaceful face on the pillow broke something inside her that she wasn't sure would ever heal. The funeral was small, but well attended. Patrick Sullivan had been a good man, a beloved teacher who had touched countless lives during his 40 years in the classroom. The church was filled with former students, colleagues, and friends, all of them sharing stories about the man who had shaped their understanding of literature and life. Rosemary held herself together through the service, through the burial, through the reception afterward where people offered condolences and shared memories. She smiled and thanked them, and played the role of the grieving but composed daughter because that's what was expected of her. It wasn't until she was alone in her father's house, sorting through his belongings, that she finally allowed herself to fall apart. She was sitting on his bedroom floor, surrounded by boxes of books and papers, when the tears finally came. They started slowly, then built to great, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from the very center of her being. She cried for the father she had lost, for the conversations they would never have, for the grandchildren he would never meet. She cried until she had no tears left, and then she just sat there in the gathering darkness, feeling more alone than she ever had in her life. That's how Elias found her. "Rosemary?" His voice was soft, concerned. The front door was open. I was worried. She looked up at him through swollen eyes, not even surprised to see him there. Somehow it seemed natural that he would appear when she needed someone most. "He's gone," she said simply. "I know. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do without him. You don't have to know right now. You just have to breathe." Elias sat down beside her on the floor, not touching but close enough that she could feel his presence. Tell me about him, he said. What? Tell me about your father. What was he like? He was everything good in the world. Rosemary's voice was hoarse from crying. He taught high school English for 40 years, and he never lost his love for books or his faith in young people. He used to say that every student was a story waiting to be written, and that his job was to help them find their voice. He sounds like a remarkable man. He was. He raised Tommy and me after Mom died, and he never once made us feel like we were a burden. He worked 2 jobs to pay for Tommy's trade school, and he was so proud when I opened the bookstore. Fresh tears started to fall. He was supposed to walk me down the aisle someday. He was supposed to meet his grandchildren. He was supposed to have more time. I'm sorry, Elias said again, and there was something in his voice that made Rosemary look at him more closely. You lost someone too, didn't you? She asked. A long time ago. Who? Everyone I ever cared about, eventually. That's the burden of living as long as I have. How long is that exactly? Elias was quiet for a moment. Longer than you might think. You're not going to tell me, are you? Not tonight. Tonight is about your father, not about my secrets. Rosemary nodded, too exhausted to push for answers. Will you stay with me? I don't want to be alone right now. Of course. They sat together in comfortable silence as the room grew darker around them. Finally, Elias spoke. Would you like me to help you with this? He gestured to the boxes of belongings. You don't have to. I want to. Why? Because you shouldn't have to do it alone. Because your father was important to you, which makes him important to me. You never even met him. No, but I know he raised an extraordinary daughter. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of man he was. They spent the next several hours going through Patrick Sullivan's belongings, sorting them into piles of things to keep, things to donate, and things to throw away. Elias listened as Rosemary shared memories attached to various items. The pipe her father had smoked while grading papers, the first edition of Hamlet he had given her for her 16th birthday, the photo of her parents on their wedding day. He loved her so much, Rosemary said, holding the wedding photo. Even after she died, he never looked at another woman. He used to say that some people are lucky enough to find their one true love, and that he'd had his. Do you believe that? Elias asked. That there's only one person for everyone? I don't know, maybe. Dad seemed to think so. And you? Do you think you'll ever find that kind of love? Rosemary looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something shift in her chest. I don't know, she said softly, but I'm starting to think it might be closer than I thought. Rosemary, I know what you're going to ask, she said, and I know what my answer is going to be. Do you? Yes. It's going to be no, but not because I don't, not because you haven't. It's just, you're not ready. I'm not ready. I understand. Do you? Really? Yes. Grief changes everything. It makes you question what you thought you knew about life and love and what really matters. You need time to figure out who you are without your father before you can figure out who you might be with someone else. How do you know so much about grief? Experience. Right. All those people you've lost. All those people I've lost. Rosemary set down the wedding photo and turned to face him fully. Elias, will you answer one question for me? Honestly, if I can. Are you human? The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Elias looked into her eyes and saw that she already knew the answer, or at least suspected it. No, he said simply. I'm not. What are you? Does it matter? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. I'm someone who loves you. Everything else is just details. Important details. Perhaps, but not tonight. Rosemary nodded, accepting his non-answer for now. Will you ask me anyway? Even though you know what I'm going to say? Do you want me to? Yes. I think I need the normalcy of it. The tradition. Elias took her hands in his, and she noticed again how cold his skin was, how strong his grip. Rosemary Sullivan, will you marry me? No, she said, but there was no heat in it. But thank you for asking, and thank you for being here tonight. I couldn't have gotten through this without you. You're stronger than you think. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to find out. Elias lifted her hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. I'll always be here when you need me, Rosemary, whether you marry me or not. I know, she said, and realized that she did know, that somewhere over the past 20 years, Elias Nighthaven had become a constant in her life, as reliable as the sunrise and twice as comforting. "I should go," he said. "Let you get some rest." "Elias?" "Yes?" "Next year, when you ask, I might have a different answer." "Might?" "Might. I'll take might." "Good, because that's all I can promise right now." "It's enough." After he left, Rosemary sat alone in her father's house and thought about love and loss and the strange, patient man who had been proposing to her for 20 years. She thought about the way he had appeared when she needed him most, the way he had helped her through the worst night of her life without asking for anything in return. She thought about the fact that he wasn't human, and found that it didn't frighten her as much as it probably should have. Most of all, she thought about the possibility that her father had been right, that some people were lucky enough to find their one true love, and that maybe, just maybe, hers had been standing in front of her all along. Year 30. The illness came without warning, striking Rosemary down in the prime of her life with a virulence that left doctors baffled and her friends terrified. One day she was fine, running her bookstore and living her life, and the next she was bedridden with a fever that wouldn't break and a weakness that seemed to seep into her very bones. "It's some kind of infection," Dr. Matthews told her as she lay in her hospital bed, pale and fragile against the white sheets. "But we can't identify the pathogen. We've tried every antibiotic we have, but nothing seems to work." "Am I going to die?" Rosemary asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're going to do everything we can to prevent that," the doctor said, which wasn't really an answer. But Rosemary heard what he didn't say, that they were running out of options, that her condition was deteriorating despite their best efforts, that she might indeed be dying at the age of 48. The thought should have terrified her, but instead she felt a strange kind of peace. She had lived a good life, had achieved her dreams, had made a difference in her small corner of the world. If this was the end, she could accept it. What she couldn't accept was the thought of leaving without telling Elias how she felt about him. He had been at the hospital every day since she was admitted, sitting by her bedside when visiting hours allowed and somehow managing to be there even when they didn't. The nurses had stopped questioning his presence, accepting him as family despite the lack of any official relationship. "You look tired," Rosemary said one evening as he sat in the chair beside her bed. "I'm fine," Elias replied, though she could see the strain in his face. "When was the last time you went home?" "I don't remember." "Elias, I'm not leaving you, Rosemary. Not now. You can't stay here forever. Watch me." She studied his face, noting the way his jaw was set with determination, the way his hands gripped the arms of his chair, as if he could hold her to life through sheer force of will. "Are you using your abilities going to keep me alive?" she asked. "What abilities? Don't play dumb with me. I know you're not human. I've known for years." "How?" "Little things. The way you never seem to age, the way you're always cold, the way you move like you're not quite bound by the same physical laws as the rest of us." Rosemary's voice was getting weaker, but her eyes were sharp. "So are you? Using whatever supernatural powers you have to keep me here?" Elias was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," he said finally, "but only to ease your pain and give your body strength to fight. I can't cure you, Rosemary. I can only support you." "Why?" "Because I love you. Because the thought of losing you is unbearable. Even though I've never said yes to your proposals. Even though you've never said yes to my proposals." Rosemary reached out and took his hand, marveling at how cold his skin was, how strong his fingers. "What are you, Elias?" "Really? I'm a vampire." "I thought so. Does that frighten you?" "No." "Should it?" "Most people would say yes." "I'm not most people." "No, you're not. How old are you?" 430 years old. That's a long time." "It is. Have you ever been married before?" "No." "Loved anyone else?" "Not like this. Not even close to this." Rosemary squeezed his hand as tightly as her weakened state would allow. "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I love you too." Elias went very still. "What did you say?" "I said I love you too. I have for years, probably. I was just too stubborn and scared to admit it." "Rosemary, I know the timing is terrible. I know I'm probably dying, and that this is the worst possible moment to finally figure out my feelings. But I couldn't leave without telling you. You're not leaving. You're going to get better." "Am I?" "Yes, because I won't let you go. You might not have a choice. There's always a choice." "What do you mean?" Elias leaned forward, his eyes intense. I could transform you, make you like me. You'd survive the illness and we'd have eternity together. As a vampire. As a vampire. What would that mean exactly? You'd be immortal, stronger, faster, more resilient than any human. You'd never age, never get sick, never die of natural causes. And the downside? You'd need blood to survive. You'd be sensitive to sunlight. You'd have to watch everyone you care about age and die while you remained unchanged. Everyone except you. Everyone except me. Rosemary closed her eyes, considering the offer. Would I still be me? Yes. The transformation changes your body, not your soul. And you? Would you still love me if I were a vampire? I would love you if you were a dragon. Your species is irrelevant to my feelings. That's quite a declaration. It's the truth. I need time to think about it. Of course. But Rosemary, don't take too long. Your condition is deteriorating rapidly. How long do I have? Days, maybe a week. And if I choose transformation, it would have to be soon. Tonight, preferably. And if I choose to remain human, then I'll stay with you until the end. I'll make sure you're not in pain and I'll hold your hand when you go. You'd do that? Even knowing that you could save me? I'd do that because I love you enough to respect your choice. Rosemary felt tears sliding down her cheeks. 30 years, she whispered. What? You've been proposing to me for 30 years. You've been patient and kind and constant, and I've been an idiot. You haven't been an idiot. You've been cautious. There's nothing wrong with that. Isn't there? I wasted so much time, Elias. So many years when we could have been together. We have been together. Maybe not in the way I wanted, but we've been in each other's lives. That's not nothing. But it's not everything either. No, it's not. I want everything, Elias. I want to marry you and spend whatever time I have left as your wife. Whatever time you have left? Does that mean? It means I want to remain human. I want to live whatever life I have left as myself, not as some supernatural version of myself. Even if it's only days? Even if it's only days. Rosemary, will you ask me? One more time? Are you sure? I'm sure. Elias stood up and moved to kneel beside her hospital bed. Rosemary Sullivan, will you marry me? Yes, she said, and the word felt like coming home. Yes, I'll marry you. Even though I'm a vampire? Because you're a vampire. Because you're immortal and patient and you've loved me longer than anyone has a right to be loved. Even though you're dying. Because I'm dying. Because life is short and precious and I don't want to waste another moment of it. Elias leaned forward and kissed her forehead gently. I love you, Rosemary Sullivan. I love you too, Elias Nighthaven. And I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. It was worth the wait. Was it really? Every second of it. They were married 3 days later in Rosemary's hospital room, with Tommy serving as witness and a justice of the peace, who owed Elias a favor performing the ceremony. Rosemary wore a white nightgown that Elias had brought from her house, and he wore a simple black suit that made his pale skin look luminous. It wasn't the wedding either of them had imagined, but it was perfect in its own way, intimate and honest and full of a love that had taken 30 years to fully bloom. Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? The justice asked. I do, Elias said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. And do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do, Rosemary whispered, her voice weak but certain. Then, by the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Elias leaned down and kissed Rosemary softly, and she felt something settle into place in her chest, a sense of completion, of rightness, of finally being exactly where she belonged. Hello, husband, she said against his lips. Hello, wife, he replied. How does it feel to finally get what you wanted? Like the beginning of everything that matters, even though it's also the end, especially because it's also the end. The best things in life are often the most fleeting. You're going to be alone again when I'm gone. No, I'm not. I'm going to carry you with me forever. Every memory, every moment, every word of love we've shared. You'll never really be gone, Rosemary. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll be happy. After I'm gone, promise me you'll find a way to be happy. I promise to try. That's all I ask. Rosemary lived. Against all medical expectations, against the grim predictions of every doctor who examined her, against the very laws of nature themselves, she recovered. The fever broke on the 4th day after their wedding, The weakness began to fade, and within 2 weeks she was strong enough to go home. "It's unprecedented," Dr. Matthews told them as he signed her discharge papers. "I've never seen anything like it. The infection just disappeared, as if it was never there." "Miracles happen," Elias said mildly, though Rosemary caught the satisfied gleam in his eyes. "Did you?" she asked him later, when they were alone in her house. "Did I what?" "Cure me. Use your vampire abilities to heal me." "I told you before I can't cure illness, I can only ease pain and provide strength. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you." "Elias? Rosemary, does it matter? You're alive, we're married, and we have time together. Isn't that enough?" "It's everything," she said, and kissed him with all the passion of a woman who had been given a second chance at life and love. They had 18 years together as husband and wife. 18 years of shared mornings and quiet evenings, of running the bookstore together and traveling to places Rosemary had only dreamed of seeing. 18 years of learning each other's habits and quirks, of growing old together, or rather of Rosemary growing old while Elias used subtle magic to age his appearance alongside her. "You don't have to do that," she told him one morning as she caught him adjusting his reflection in the mirror, adding lines around his eyes and silver to his hair. "Do what? Pretend to age. I know what you really look like. I'm not pretending for you. I'm pretending for everyone else. It would raise questions if I stayed 25 while my wife turned 70. Let them ask questions. I'd rather not deal with the complications." "What complications? We're happy, we're in love. We're not hurting anyone. What else matters? You'd be surprised how much people care about things that aren't their business. Then let's give them something else to talk about." "Like what?" "Like how disgustingly in love we are after all these years. Like how you still bring me flowers every week, like how I still get butterflies when you walk into a room." "Do you really?" "Really what?" "Get butterflies when I walk into a room. Every single time? After 18 years of marriage? After 48 years of knowing you?" Elias stopped adjusting his appearance and turned to face her fully. "I love you, Rosemary Nighthaven. I love you too, Elias Nighthaven. Even if you are ridiculously vain about your fake aging process. I am not vain. You spent 20 minutes this morning making sure your fake wrinkles were symmetrical. They have to be believable. They're wrinkles, not a work of art. Good wrinkles are a work of art." Rosemary laughed, the sound as bright and joyful as it had been when she was 18. "You're ridiculous. I'm thorough. You're ridiculous and I love you. Good, because you're stuck with me. For how long? Forever, if I have my way. And if I have mine?" "What do you mean?" Rosemary's expression grew serious. "Elias, I'm 66 years old. I'm not going to live forever, no matter how much vampire magic you use to keep me healthy. You could, if you changed your mind about transformation. I'm not going to change my mind." "Why not?" "Because I've lived a full human life. I've experienced everything I wanted to experience, accomplished everything I set out to accomplish. I've loved and been loved, and that's enough." "It's not enough for me. I know, but it has to be." "Rosemary, promise me something." "What?" "Promise me that when my time comes, you'll let me go. You won't try to transform me against my will. You won't use your powers to keep me alive beyond my natural span. Promise me you'll let me die human." "I can't promise that." "You have to. I can't lose you again. I spent 30 years thinking I might never have you. And now that I do, now that you do, you have to trust me to know what's best for my own life. What if what's best for your life is living forever with me? What if what's best for my life is dying with dignity when my time comes? That's not better. It's what I want. What you want might change. It won't. How can you be so certain? Because I know myself. Because I've had 18 years to think about it. Because I love you enough to want you to respect my choice." Elias was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the garden where Rosemary grew the roses he brought her every week. "If I promise," he said finally, "will you promise me something in return?" "What?" "Promise me you'll live fully until the end. Promise me you won't start dying before you have to." "I promise. And promise me you'll tell me when you're ready. When the time comes, don't try to spare my feelings. Let me be with you." "I promise." "Then I promise too. When your time comes, I'll let you go. Thank you. But not a moment before. Not a moment before." They kept their promises to each other. Rosemary lived fully and joyfully, embracing each day as a gift and finding wonder in the smallest moments. She expanded the bookstore, mentored young entrepreneurs, traveled with Elias to every continent, and loved him with the fierce intensity of someone who knew their time was limited. Elias, for his part, treasured every moment they had together. He memorized the sound of her laugh, the way she looked when she was reading, the feel of her hand in his. He photographed her constantly, wanting to preserve every expression, every mood, every stage of her beautiful, aging process. "You're going to have enough pictures to wallpaper the house," she teased him one afternoon, as he snapped yet another photo of her reading in the garden. "That's the idea." "Why so many?" "Because I want to remember everything. Every version of you, every moment we've shared. You have an immortal memory. You'll remember anyway. Memory fades, even immortal memory. But photographs last forever. Not forever. Nothing lasts forever. Love does. Does it? Mine will." "How can you be so sure?" "Because it's survived 30 years of rejection, 18 years of marriage, and it's only gotten stronger. If that's not forever love, I don't know what is. You might feel differently after I'm gone. I won't. You might meet someone else. I won't want to. Elias, Rosemary, I've lived for over 400 years. I've met thousands of people, loved a few, cared about many. But you're the only one who's ever made me feel complete. You're the only one who's ever felt like home. That doesn't change just because you're mortal. But you'll be alone. I'll be alone, but I won't be empty. You've filled me up with enough love to last several lifetimes. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person. You've been carrying it beautifully for 48 years. Have I? You have." The end came gently, as Rosemary had hoped it would. She was 72 years old, still sharp and witty and beautiful, in the way that only truly loved women can be. She had been feeling tired for several weeks, sleeping more and eating less, but she insisted it was just the natural slowing down of age. "I'm ready," she told Elias one evening as they sat together in their bedroom, watching the sunset through the window. "Ready for what?" "To go. I can feel it, Elias. My body is tired and I'm ready to rest." "How long?" "Soon. Days. Maybe a week." "Are you afraid?" "No. Are you?" "Terrified." "Of what?" "Of losing you. Of being alone again. Of forgetting what it felt like to be this happy." "You won't forget. And you won't really lose me. I'll always be part of you." "Will you?" "Always. Every book you read, every rose you see, every sunset like this one, I'll be there. Promise?" "I promise. I love you, Rosemary. I love you too, Elias. Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for finally saying yes. Was it worth it? The 50 years of waiting? Every second of it? Even knowing how it would end? Especially knowing how it would end. The best love stories aren't the ones that last forever, Elias. They're the ones that matter forever. This one will matter forever." "Yes, it will." Rosemary died 3 days later, peacefully in her sleep with Elias holding her hand. Her last words were, "I love you," and her last expression was a smile. The funeral was the largest Millbrook had ever seen. Rosemary had touched countless lives during her 72 years, and it seemed like everyone she had ever helped or befriended came to pay their respects. The church overflowed with flowers, stories, and tears. Elias spoke at the service, his voice steady despite the grief that threatened to overwhelm him. "Rosemary Nighthaven was the most extraordinary person I've ever known," he said. "Not because she was perfect, but because she was perfectly herself. She was stubborn and independent, passionate and principled, kind and generous, and absolutely unwilling to settle for anything less than authentic love. She taught me that the best things in life are worth waiting for, that patience is a form of love, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to choose their own path, even when that path leads away from you. She lived fully, loved deeply, and left this world a better place than she found it. And while I will miss her every day for the rest of my very long life, I am grateful beyond measure for the time we had together." After the service, after the burial, after the last mourner had gone home, Elias stood alone by Rosemary's grave. The headstone was simple, bearing only her name, her dates, and the words, "Beloved wife and friend." "Well," he said to the freshly turned earth, "that's that, I suppose. 51 years from proposal to goodbye. Not bad for a vampire who'd never been in love before." The wind rustled through the roses he had planted around her grave, and for a moment he could have sworn he heard her laugh. "I know what you're thinking," he continued. "You're thinking I should move on, find someone else, start over. But here's the thing, my love. I don't want to start over. I want to remember. I want to carry you with me for the rest of eternity, because you made eternity worth living." He knelt down and placed a single white rose on her grave, just as he had done every year for 50 years. "I'll be back next year," he said, "and the year after that, and every year until the end of time, because some promises are worth keeping forever." Elias stood in the cemetery on a crisp October morning, holding a bouquet of white roses and feeling every one of his nearly 500 years. The world had changed dramatically since Rosemary's death. Technology had advanced, society had evolved, and Millbrook had grown from a small town into a bustling city. But some things remained constant. "Hello, my love," he said as he approached her grave. "I'm back as promised." The headstone was weathered now, the inscription softened by decades of rain and snow, but the roses around the grave were as vibrant as ever. Elias tended them personally, using his vampire abilities to ensure they bloomed year-round in defiance of season and weather. "I have news," he said as he arranged the fresh flowers. "The bookstore is thriving. Your great-niece Sarah is running it now, and she has your eye for what people want to read. She's added a coffee shop and started hosting poetry readings. You'd love what she's done with the place." He settled onto the small bench he had installed beside the grave, the same bench where he came to sit and talk to her every week. "I've been thinking about our story lately," he continued, "about the 50 years I spent proposing to you, and the 21 years we had together after you finally said yes. People always ask me if I regret it, if I think all that waiting was worth such a relatively short time together. A butterfly landed on one of the roses, its wings catching the morning sunlight. The answer is always the same. I would wait 1,000 years for one day with you. I would endure 1,000,000 rejections for one yes. Because what we had, Rosemary, what we had was perfect. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. You taught me that love isn't about possession or control. It's about patience and respect and the willingness to let someone choose their own path, even when that path doesn't lead to you. You taught me that the best love is the kind that makes you better, not the kind that makes you dependent. And you taught me that endings aren't always tragedies. Sometimes they're just completions, the natural conclusion to a story that was always meant to be finite." Elias reached into his jacket and pulled out a small worn notebook, Rosemary's journal from their last year together. He had read it countless times, but her words still had the power to comfort him. "I found something I wanted to share with you," he said, opening to a page near the end. "You wrote this about a month before you died. Elias asked me today if I regret saying no for so many years, if I wish we had started our life together sooner. The answer surprised even me. I don't regret a single no because each one taught us something important about love and patience and the value of choice. If I had said yes when I was 18, it would have been the impulsive decision of a girl who didn't know herself yet. If I had said yes when I was 25, it would have been the practical decision of a woman who was tired of being alone. But when I finally said yes at 48, it was the conscious choice of a woman who knew exactly what she was choosing and why. That's the kind of yes that builds a marriage strong enough to last forever, even when forever is only 21 years. Elias closed the journal and wiped away tears that still came easily after all these years. You were right, as always. Every no led to the perfect yes. Every year of waiting led to the perfect love. Every moment we had together was worth every moment we didn't. I still love you, Rosemary. I still miss you. I still think about you every day and dream about you every night. And I still believe that what we had was the greatest love story ever told, not because it lasted forever, but because it mattered forever. So here's my promise to you, my darling wife. I will keep coming here every year until the end of time. I will keep tending your roses and telling you about the world and loving you with every fiber of my immortal being. Because some loves are too powerful to be ended by something as small as death. I love you, Rosemary Nighthaven. I will always love you. And I would still wait 50 years for you if that's what it took. As Elias stood to leave, the wind picked up, scattering rose petals around the grave like confetti. And for just a moment, he could have sworn he heard her voice carried on the breeze. I love you too, Elias. And I would say yes again every time. He smiled, the first genuine smile he had managed in weeks, and walked away knowing that some promises are kept not just until death but beyond it. Some loves really do last forever. What an absolutely breathtaking journey of patience, persistence, and the transformative power of true love. Elias's 50-year courtship of Rosemary proves that the greatest love stories aren't always about instant attraction. Sometimes they're about the courage to keep believing when everyone else would have given up. Which moment moved you the most? When Elias first proposed in the bookstore? When Rosemary finally said, "I love you too," during her illness? Or when she finally said yes after 50 years of waiting? If you enjoyed this epic tale of love that transcends time and the beauty of choosing someone every single day, make sure to subscribe for more stories that will make you believe in the power of never giving up on love. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think Elias was romantic or obsessive in his 50-year pursuit? And would you have the patience to wait that long for your true love? And get ready for our next story about a demon lord who's been cursed to work as a kindergarten teacher, until he meets the single mom who might just break his curse and steal his heart.